So there's a famous Colombian saying that says, eat breakfast like a king, lunch like a prince, and dinner like a beggar. So what does this mean? It means that breakfast is the most important meal of the day, right? And as the day goes by, your meals are supposed to get lighter. I'm David Tellez, and today we're going to be speaking about culinary Colombia. So despite our need for food, we get curious about things about like sanitation, quality, or maybe even the popularity of it, especially when we're traveling overseas. We want to be familiar with what kind of foods we're eating. We don't like sitting on the table not knowing what's in the menu. So this helped us narrow our choices. To give you a little bit of background on myself, I come from a Colombian family. I grew up, born and raised, eating the traditional dishes. I have the opportunity in the past to go to Cartagena, Medellin, and Bogota. These are 3 major cities in the country of Colombia. So I've been able to get familiar with the foods and different styles. So speaking about foods, today we're going to be speaking about Colombia's 3 major or popular foods: changua, arepas, and coffee. So let's start with the healthiest of them all, changua. Changua is basically a milk and egg drop soup. What it is that milk and water are boiled together. You put in cilantro, you put in parsley, you put a cracked egg, but without breaking the yolk. You can either put stale bread inside the bowl, or you can put it on the side, depends on your personal preference. Now this dish takes us back to 600 Common Era. This was back in the indigenous people's times. This was a tribe called the Muisca tribe. These people lived all the way up in the mountains of Bogota, the capital. Because the elevation is so high, we're talking about cold, misty mornings. So this was the ideal breakfast for them in the midst of that weather. And fun fact for you, journalist Amy Wooldridge actually tells us in an article that this soup is actually a really good hangover soup. And it's really good to soothe the stomach. So a lot of Colombians like to eat this the day after a heavy night. And aside from the side dish of stale bread, we can talk about the Colombian tortilla that people refer to as. This is called arepas. So arepas are patties made of corn dough with a lot of diversity in it. The name, the description is as simple as it gets. These can be either stuffed with cheese, veggies, or meat. These can be either grilled or steamed. And there was once a theory that this was a gift from the gods in the past, back in the Muisca tribe times. According to the article, The DNA of Arepas, author Marcela Rivera tells us there is over 42 types of arepas known to Colombia. And that's just an estimate. Now the secret to the perfect arepa is all in the cheese and the butter that you put into it. So the more of it, the better. Now don't go too crazy though. Now what better way to enjoy this warm pastry with a nice cup of coffee? Now, coffee is not just a crop in the country of Colombia. This coffee actually represents Colombia's national identity now. Now, why do people rant so much about Colombia's coffee? What is it that they always rant about? Well, it's because of its rich flavor, all due to its perfect climate conditions. We have the perfect weather, they have perfect rainfall, the soil. All of those things have a role in it. Now we go into its origins back in the mid-16th century, where Jesuit priests came from the country of Europe, and they came from Europe and they began to introduce the different ideas about planting coffee trees, or planting just these trees to grow the cherries. What happens is that the Colombians resisted at first due to the amount of time it takes for these trees to grow. They said, well, this takes 5 long years, so how in the world are we going to make a living out of this? So they resisted at first, but what ends up happening is that this priest out of nowhere comes up by the name of Francisco Romero. He introduces the idea, instead of the normal penance at confession, they use planting trees. All right, you did this, you're going to plant 3 to 4 trees in your household. Eventually, this becomes so popular that the Archbishop of Colombia makes it a practice that puts it into order, making it into the success that we now have witnessed. So how can I leave you guys with this? Let's just rewind a little bit. We talked about Colombia's changua, arepas, and coffee. My tip to you is, wouldn't you like to die knowing that you tried it all and didn't like it instead of not trying it at all? Be skeptical of it, but adventure and research. Thank you very much.